Incheon International Airport looked too polished to hold fear. Sunset poured through the glass walls in wide orange bands, turning the floors into mirrors and the duty-free boutiques into glowing displays of perfume, diamonds, watches, and expensive silence. Boarding calls moved through the terminal in calm voices. First-class passengers drifted toward private lounges with leather bags and the slow confidence of people who believe systems existed to carry them gently. Zamira Kalu walked alone toward Gate 42. She wore a beige trench coat over understated travel clothes, her curls gathered neatly into a low ponytail. Her passport rested in one hand, her boarding pass in the other, and inside her carry-on, beneath a folded scarf, lay a sealed envelope she had not let out of her sight since leaving Johannesburg. Flight KX 904 to Singapore was boarding in 40 minutes. She had planned the route carefully, not because she was running, because she knew someone would try to stop her. At the priority security lane, the officer scanned her passport. The screen flashed red. Not loud, not dramatic, just a small red box that changed the air around her. The officer's smile disappeared. "Please wait here, ma'am." Zamira did not move. Two airport police officers arrived within seconds. One stood too close to her carry-on. The other spoke into a shoulder radio. A woman in a dark airport police blazer approached, her badge reading Inspector Hanjori. Her face was calm, but her eyes studied details before speaking. "Ms. Zamira Kalu?" "Yes. You have been flagged in connection with a stolen diplomatic cargo seal linked to a restricted medical shipment." Passengers nearby slowed, without meaning to. Zamira kept her voice even. "What time was the alert created?" Inspector Han blinked once. Most detained passengers asked what they had done. Zamira asked when the system changed. "That is not the usual first question," Han said. "It is the correct one." The inspector's gaze sharpened. "Do you consent to a search of your carry-on?" "I consent to a logged search with time-stamped evidence handling and camera coverage." One of the officers frowned. Han lifted a hand before he could speak. "Noted." They opened the carry-on on a stainless inspection counter. Clothes, laptop, charger, toiletry case, scarf. And finally, the sealed envelope. The officer reached for it. Zamira's voice lowered. "That envelope is legally confidential." The officer ignored her. Inspector Han stopped him. "Do not open it yet." Outside the glass wall, police vehicles waited near the restricted tarmac road. Ground crews moved around aircraft under the orange sky. Somewhere beyond the terminal, cargo containers were being loaded into planes whose passengers would never know what traveled beneath their feet. Han looked at the screen again. The alert carried a company code. Vante Airbridge. Her expression changed. That was when the terminal shifted. Security personnel, near the private lounge, stood straighter. A black convoy stopped outside the executive entrance. Men in dark suits moved into the terminal without rushing, and still everyone made space. Seo Ijin entered like a man the airport had already been warned to obey. He wore an immaculate black designer suit, a luxury watch catching the last light, his face composed in a way that made panic around him seem unprofessional. He was devastatingly handsome, but not soft. The kind of handsome that came with locked doors, signed clearances, and people who disappeared from conversations when he entered them. Head of Vante Airbridge. Aviation security, billionaire. Mafia boss, if whispered after midnight. He stopped outside the glass partition and looked at Zamira. She looked back.
No trembling. No pleading.
No performance. Ijin turned to Inspector Han. "Do not move her yet."
Hanshin lifta.
"This is airport police jurisdiction. The alert used my company's code," he said. "I want to know why a passenger was arrested under Vante authority before anyone explains it to the press, customs, or my lawyers." Then his gaze returned to Zamira. The sealed envelope lay on the inspection table between them. And Zamira realized the first door had opened exactly as she needed it to. Seo Ijin did not take Zamira to a holding room. That would have been expected. Instead, he bought silence. Within 12 minutes, every first-class passenger on flight KX 904 had been upgraded, compensated, rerouted, or politely removed under an airline discretion notice so expensive no one argued. The departure was delayed under a security review. The cabin door remained open only to authorized crew, airport police, and Vanti's legal representative. By the time Zamira was escorted onto the aircraft, first class was empty. Cream leather suites curved beneath ambient golden lighting. Walnut tables gleamed beside crystal glasses. Through the panoramic windows, the runway burned orange under sunset. Ground crews moved like shadows below. In the galley, 2 flight attendants stood with nervous expressions, pretending not to watch. Ijin sat alone at the center suite, one hand resting on a folder of printed documents. Zamira sat opposite him. Her passport, boarding pass, sealed envelope, all placed neatly on the table. He studied her arrangement. "You are very organized for someone arrested at an airport." "I was detained," she said. "Not convicted." A faint movement touched his mouth. Almost a smile. Almost not. "They said you were carrying a stolen diplomatic cargo seal." "Then they lied carefully." He leaned forward. "Who paid you?" "No one paid me enough to be this inconvenient." The flight attendant near the galley looked down quickly. Ijin's eyes remained on Zamira. "Most people tremble when they are alone with me." Zamira glanced around the empty cabin. "You bought 20 seats to ask one woman questions. That means you are more afraid than I am." Silence. Even the cabin lights seemed to hold still. Ijin did smile then, but there was no warmth in it. "You misunderstand control." "No," Zamira said. "I audit systems for a living. Control is usually what powerful people call fear when they can afford better furniture." His gaze sharpened. "What exactly do you audit?"
Aviación cargo chance.
Humanitarian shipments. High-value insurance claims. Medical transfer routes. Airport detention irregularities. The words landed one by one. Ijin looked at the sealed envelope. "And this? Proof that the seal was never stolen." "Explain." "It was duplicated by someone with access to your private terminal." His expression did not change. "That made it more dangerous." Zamira continued. "Your company has been moving ghosts through medical flights." For the first time, something in his posture shifted. Not shock. Recognition fighting disbelief. Ghosts. People who vanish from one record and reappear under another. Cargo that changes weight after clearance. Patient names replaced mid-route. Passport scans attached to bodies that never boarded. Diplomatic seals duplicated, then blamed on convenient witnesses. Ijin's fingers rested flat against the table. "You allowed yourself to be detained to tell me this?"
"No," she said.
"I allowed myself to be detained because every other route to you passed through the people doing it." He looked toward the aircraft door. "Seal the cabin." His security chief hesitated. Ijin's voice stayed quiet. "Not to trap her. To keep everyone else from deciding what I hear." The cabin door closed with a soft mechanical thud. Zamira did not flinch. Ijin noticed. And for the first time since she entered the aircraft, he stopped treating her like a suspect and began treating her like a locked file. Zamira did not open the envelope immediately. That irritated Ijin more than fear would have. She touched the edge with 2 fingers and said, "Before this leaves my hand, I want the cabin camera active, Inspector Han present, and an evidence log created." "You still think you can set terms?" "I think your sister died because terms were hidden from the wrong person." The name that had not been spoken became louder than every engine outside. Seal Haejin. Ijin's older sister. Dead for 6 years. Officially, she had died in an overseas medical evacuation accident during a storm route emergency. Her body had returned under sealed transport. The report had been clean, tragic, and final. Ijin's eyes darkened. "Be careful." Zamira met his gaze. "I am." Inspector Han entered with a tablet and evidence seal. Captain Yoon Mubik, the senior pilot scheduled for the flight, stood near the forward galley with his arms behind his back, listening without pretending otherwise. Only then did Zamira break the envelope seal. Inside were copied manifests, cargo weight reports, passport scan extracts, a photograph, and one folded letter sealed in a transparent sleeve. Ijin saw the handwriting before he saw the name. His hand stopped halfway to the table. Zamira did not push the letter toward him. She turned it so he could read the first line. "Ijin, if this reaches you, do not ask who carried it. Ask who stopped it before." His face became very still. Zamira explained quietly. "I work for Morrow and Bale Risk Assurance. We were auditing an insurance claim tied to a humanitarian medical flight operated through Vante Airbridge. The paperwork was perfect. Too perfect. She placed the first manifest on the table. Busan to Singapore. Emergency medical transfer.
Cargo sealed.
Patient approved.
No customs delay.
Then the weight report. 4.8 kilograms discrepancy after clearance. Captain Yoon frowned from the galley. That is too small for major cargo theft. And too large for paperwork drift, Zamira said. Ijin did not look away from the letter. How did you get Haejin's warning? A Vante cargo clerk named Young Se-il sent an anonymous discrepancy file to our audit channel. Inside it was a scanned reference to your sister's final cargo review. I tracked the archive through 3 insurance disputes and 1 sealed customs appeal. She touched the photograph. It showed Seal Haejin standing in a medical cargo bay, hair tied back, one hand resting on a sealed container marked with Vante's old emblem. She discovered duplicated medical cargo seals, forged patient identifiers, and unlisted human transfers hidden under emergency medical exemptions. Ijin's voice came out low. My company filed her death as an accident. Zamira's expression softened, but not with pity. That is the version your company filed. The words were gentle. The damage was not. He finally reached for the letter. His fingers did not tremble, but his eyes changed when he read the full page. Zamira looked away to give him privacy, even though nothing about the moment was private. Beyond the aircraft windows, sunset bled into the runway. Inside the empty first-class cabin, the dead had finally arrived before departure. The evidence did not look dramatic at first. That was what made it powerful.
No bloody photographs. No cinematic confession.
Just neat rows of names, times, weights, stamps, customs codes, medical exemptions, and airport access logs. Airports did not hide secrets in dark rooms. They hid them in schedules. That was what Zamira's aunt, Madame Olayinka Kalu, had taught her years ago in Lagos after 30 years of ground operations. Look at the thing that repeats, her aunt used to say.
Corruption la routine.
It feels safe there. Zamira placed 3 manifests side by side. Same clearance pattern. Different dates. Medical urgency declared within 90 minutes of departure. Cargo inspected, sealed, then reassigned to private terminal handling. Weight increases between 4.2 and 5.1 kilograms after inspection. Passenger list updated mid-route. 1 biometric scan attached to a patient who never boarded. Ijin read quickly. Too quickly for a man seeing this for the first time. He understood systems. That was why the pattern angered him more. This passed through executive liaison. Yes. Cha Wihian's office. Yes. The name sat between them. Cha Wihian, Vante Airbridge's chief operating officer. Smooth, trusted, efficient. The man who knew which aircraft carried medicine, which flights needed diplomatic clearance, which ports moved cleanly, and which airport officials preferred not to be asked twice. Ijin had trusted him with the machinery. Zamira slid over another document. When I tried to send reports to international aviation authorities, 3 were redirected to Vante internal liaison. 2 vanished into procedural review. 1 triggered a background inquiry against me. Inspector Han looked up from her tablet. Your passport alert. Zamira nodded. It was not active when I checked in online. It appeared at security. Han began typing faster. Ijin asked, why come here in person? Because if I walked into your office, your people would decide what you saw. At an airport, systems leave timestamps. Captain Yoon gave a quiet sound of approval. Ijin noticed. Zamira continued. The ghost transfers use medical flight exemptions. Some records indicate sanctioned intermediaries. Some suggest trafficked witnesses. Some may be criminal extractions. I do not know all of it yet. And my sister? Haejin found the route before me. The cabin seemed smaller. Ijin looked toward the window. For years, he had believed his sister died because the sky was cruel, the weather changed, and emergency flights could become coffins. That grief had been simple enough to carry. This was not. This grief had signatures, passwords, offices, people he still paid.
Inspector Hans tablet Shimat.
She looked at the message, then at Ijin. The alert against Ms. Kalu's passport was created 12 minutes after she entered the terminal. Ijin turned slowly. Han continued. It was not active when she arrived. Someone generated it from inside Vanny's private terminal system. The aircraft engines remained silent.
No takeoff clearance. No departure.
Only a first-class cabin becoming heavier with every timestamp. Cha Wihian arrived at Gate 42, wearing concern with surgical precision. He was handsome in the quiet corporate way, with a navy suit, silver tie, and the controlled expression of a man used to cleaning problems before they reached the person in charge. He stepped into the first-class cabin and looked first at Ijin, then at Zamira, then at the documents spread across the walnut table. Not enough surprise. Zamira saw it. So did Ijin. Sir, Wihian said, we have a serious diplomatic exposure. This woman is manipulating a grief file and obstructing an international departure. Airport authorities should proceed with transfer. Inspector Han's expression cooled. She remains under airport police supervision. Wihian smiled politely. Of course. But Vante must protect medical corridor confidentiality. Zamira looked at him. There it was. Not proof by itself, but a crack. I have not said medical corridor protection in your presence, she said. Wihian turned to her. That is the obvious category of concern. No, she replied. The official passenger alert says stolen diplomatic cargo seal. The cabin discussion used humanitarian medical flights. You chose medical corridor protection because that is the phrase in the transfer files. Captain Yoon stepped forward. I am grounding this aircraft until cargo and passenger irregularities are resolved. Wihian's eyes hardened. You do not have authority to delay after executive clearance. Captain Yoon did not move. Aircraft do not take off because powerful men dislike questions. The cabin went very still. Ijin almost looked at him with respect. Wihian adjusted his cuff. Sir, this is becoming theatrical. No, Ijin said. Theater requires an audience. This is a record. Zamira opened the final section of Heijin's file. A cargo review. Signed 6 years earlier. Flagging duplicated seals and patient identity mismatches. At the bottom of the review was a confirmation signature stating the matter had been received for executive handling.
Cha Wihin.
The name was written cleanly in black. Ijin turned the page toward him. You told me Heijin's final review was lost in the accident. Wihian looked at the signature for 1 second too long. Then he sighed softly. Not like an innocent man, like a tired one. Your sister saw too much and trusted the wrong people. No one spoke. The flight attendants in the galley froze.
Inspector unstopped tipping.
Captain Yoon's jaw tightened. Ijin's face emptied of everything except focus. You are not denying the signature. Wihian's gaze lifted. I am saying grief makes men easy to steer. Something cold moved through Ijin's eyes. Zamira saw it and understood why men feared him. But she also saw something else.
Pain.
Not loud. Not helpless. Old pain discovering it had been managed by the person standing in front of him. Wihian looked at the sealed envelope, then at Zamira. You should have stayed with insurance reports. Zamira's hands remained folded on the table. And you should have written cleaner manifests. For the first time, Wihian's mask cracked. Only slightly. But enough. Ijin leaned back, no longer interrogating the woman across from him. He was looking at the man beside him, the man he had trusted with signatures, the man who had filed his sister's death into silence. The cabin lights glowed warm over cream leather, empty suites, and crystal glasses no one had touched. Outside, the runway darkened. Flight KX-904 did not move. And inside first class, Seal Ijin finally understood that the woman he bought the cabin to question had not brought danger onto his plane. She had brought proof of the danger already loaded beneath it. Seal Ijin had bought first class to interrogate Zamira Kalu. Now he used it to build a record. The cabin changed without anyone moving furniture. Cream leather suites became witness chairs. Walnut tables became evidence desks. Crystal glasses sat untouched beside printed manifests, detention logs, cargo scans, and the sealed envelope that had carried his sister's handwriting back from the dead. Ijin stood in the aisle and looked at Inspector Han. Record everything. Han nodded once. Airport legal counsel was brought aboard. An independent aviation authority observer joined through the forward door. Captain Yoon remained near the galley, arms folded, refusing to treat this as anything less than a flight safety issue. Vanny's compliance backup arrived pale and sweating, clearly aware that their department had been bypassed for years. Cha Wei-hyun tried to leave. 2 airport officers stepped into his path. "I have executive obligations," Wei-hyun said. Inspector Han did not blink. "You also have a signature on a dead woman's cargo review." He stayed. Zamira was asked to present the evidence again under recorded statement. This time, Ijin did not sit opposite her like a predator studying prey. He sat beside her. That small change unsettled the cabin more than shouting would have. Zamira began with the first medical flight, then the second, then the third. Same emergency exemption pattern, same private terminal reroute, same duplicated cargo seal, same weight increase after inspection, same patient identity update too close to departure. She placed the route map on the table. "These are not mistakes.
Mistakes vary."
This repeats. Ijin looked at the executive approval chain. Wei-hyun's key. Yes. Wei-hyun gave a soft laugh. Digital keys are shared by assistants. Zamira turned one page. Then your assistant also used your personal override phrase. The cabin fell quiet. Ijin looked at the phrase. Corridor protection remains sovereign. He had heard Wei-hyun use it in boardrooms. He had never known it was also a lock. Inspector Han's tablet chimed again. She read the update, then lifted her eyes. Jung Se-yeol's missing employee badge was used this morning to create the false alert against Ms. Kalu. Zamira's face tightened. Ijin noticed. "You knew him." "He sent the discrepancy file," she said. Then he disappeared from his shift. Captain Yoon turned toward the aircraft door. If his badge was used today, he may still be inside the airport. Ijin's expression hardened. Find him. For the first time, the cabin no longer felt like a trap built around Zamira. It felt like a net closing around the people who had tried to frame her. Jung Se-yeol was found behind a maintenance panel near the cold-chained medical cargo zone. He was 23, shaking, with a split lip, a torn Vante vest, and one shoe missing. He clutched a broken access card like it was the last piece of himself no one had taken. When airport police brought him into the restricted cargo office, he flinched at the sight of Ijin. Zamira stepped forward first. Se-yeol. His eyes filled with relief, so sudden it looked painful. "You came. You sent the file. I thought they stopped you. They tried." He looked at Wei-hyun through the glass partition of the cargo office and went pale. Ijin's voice was controlled. "Tell me what happened." Se-yeol swallowed. "I flagged the weight changes after the Singapore medical route. Mr. Cha's office told me to delete the discrepancy. I copied it instead. Then Haejin's old file appeared in a locked archive batch. I sent it to the outside audit address." "Why my sister's file?" Ijin asked. Because she had already found the same pattern 6 years ago. The room tightened around that sentence. Se-yeol continued. "They said I duplicated seals. They used my badge after taking it. I heard them say Ms. Kalu would be flagged at security and blamed for carrying a stolen seal." Zamira looked toward the runway. "What about KX-904? Se-yeol's face changed. "There is cargo already loaded beneath the aircraft." Captain Yoon's jaw clenched. "What cargo?" "Medical container. Marked transplant equipment. Temperature sensitive. No standard delay allowed." Ijin turned immediately. "Ground the aircraft." "It is already grounded," Captain Yoon said. "Now we make sure it stays that way." Under airport authority supervision, the container was removed from the aircraft belly and wheeled into the inspection bay. Its seal looked perfect. Too perfect. Zamira checked the code against Haejin's list. Duplicated. The container was opened. Inside were no transplant organs. There were passport chips sealed in medical foam, forged patient identity packets, hidden cash instruments, duplicate diplomatic cargo seals, and a locked medical case marked with an older Vante emblem. Ijin reached for the case slowly. His sister's initials were etched near the latch. SHJ. For years, he had believed Haejin's final evidence burned with the aircraft report. But she had hidden a second record inside the very system that killed her. He touched the case like it might vanish. "She was still trying to reach me," he said. No one corrected him. No one needed to. Cha Wei-hian stopped pretending when the case opened. Not completely. Men like him rarely confessed with clean sentences. They adjusted the shape of truth until it looked like necessity. You do not understand what your sister found, Wei-hian said. Humanitarian routes are already dirty. Governments use them. Corporations use them. Security networks use them. I made sure Vante benefited instead of becoming someone else's tool. Ijin looked at him across Gate 42's private holding lounge. Did my sister die because she found the route? Wei-hian's face did not change. Heijin believed truth mattered more than survival. Zamira felt the air shift. That made her difficult to protect, Wei-hian added. It was not a confession. It was worse. It was a man describing murder as administrative inconvenience. Ijin took one step forward. Everyone felt the danger in it. Airport officers moved slightly, but not enough. They knew who he was. They knew what men whispered about Seal Ijin when terminals emptied after midnight. Wei-hian seemed to want it. One violent reaction would make everything easier. A grieving mafia boss attacking an executive in an airport lounge. Evidence tainted. Witnesses frightened. Headlines redirected. The woman detained. The missing clerk unstable. The sister's case buried under scandal again. Zamira saw it before Ijin did. Quietly, she said, "Do not give him the version of you he prepared for police." Ijin stopped. His hands remained at his sides. His breathing was controlled, but something ancient and wounded moved behind his eyes. Wei-hian's smile faded. He had expected rage. He had prepared for it. He had not prepared for restraint. Ijin turned to Inspector Han. "Take him." Wei-hian's expression tightened. "You will regret making this public." "No," Ijin said. "I regret keeping systems private enough for you to grow inside them." Inspector Hans signaled the officers. Wei-hian was escorted through Gate 42 as crew, police, ground staff, and first-class attendants watched in stunned silence. No one applauded. No one spoke. But every person there understood that something powerful had changed. A man who could have buried the truth in revenge had chosen record. And that choice made the evidence harder to kill. By the time Ijin returned to first class, sunset had become night. The cabin lights glowed softly over empty suites. The runway outside reflected blue and white against the glass. Flight KX 904 would not depart. Its passengers had been reassigned. Its cargo sealed as evidence. Its luxury cabin preserved as the place where the truth first spoke clearly. Zamira sat where she had sat at the beginning.
Passport.
Boarding pass. Envelope. Only now the envelope was open. Ijin took the seat across from her. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he said, "I owe you an apology. You owe many people an audit." He almost smiled.
Yes.
"But first you." She waited. "I thought calm meant guilt," he said. "I thought if I put enough pressure on you, fear would tell me what I needed." Zamira looked out at the runway. Sometimes calm means a woman has already survived the part meant to break her. The line landed quietly. He accepted it without trying to own it. "Were you afraid?" he asked. "Yes." The answer surprised him. She looked back at him. "I just refused to hand fear to people who had already written my guilt before I arrived." Ijin lowered his gaze to Heijin's letter. "Thank you for bringing her back to me." "Do not romanticize what I did," Zamira said. "I am not your miracle. I am an analyst who followed paperwork other people ignored." "What do you want?" She answered without hesitation. "Protection for Jung Se-yeol. Release and review for every witness detained under false alerts. External audit of Vante Airbridge. Compensation for victims moved or harmed through those routes. And your sister's investigation restored under her real name." Ijin nodded. "All of it. And not under your internal committee. Independent authority. And I report to them, not to you." He looked at her with something deeper than respect. "Good." Then he slid the opened envelope back toward her. "You carried this far enough," he said. "Now I carry what it proves." Zamira did not take it immediately. Then she pushed the letter gently back.
"No," she said.
"You carry your sister. I'll carry the audit." For the first time that night, Ijin looked less like a man losing control. He looked like a man learning what accountability weighed. Months later, Incheon looked polished again. It always did. Airports were good at returning to brightness after dark things passed through them. But Vante Airbridge no longer moved the same way. Humanitarian routes had independent oversight. Cargo seal verification was separated from executive control. Medical flight manifests required outside review. Airport detention alerts were timestamp audited. Witness reports bypassed internal liaison offices. Jung Se-yeol returned under protection, no longer a missing clerk, but the whistleblower whose file opened the case. Seol Haejin's final cargo review was legally filed under her full name.
Jawihin Fei Posetin.
And Zamira Kalu became the external auditor Vante executives feared most because she never raised her voice and never missed a pattern. She met Ijin again at Incheon, not in a holding room and not inside a purchased first-class cabin. They stood in a public observation lounge overlooking the runway. Below, a humanitarian medical flight prepared for departure. This time, every seal had been verified. Every patient identity confirmed. Every cargo weight logged before and after inspection. Every alert timestamp traceable.
No ghosts. No hidden passenger.
No convenient suspect waiting at security. Ijin stood beside Zamira with his hands clasped behind his back. "I never thanked you properly," he said. "You thanked me. Not enough. Gratitude is not reform." He looked at the aircraft below. "Then keep auditing me until gratitude becomes policy." Zamira turned toward him. "That was better than thanks." The aircraft began to taxi beneath the runway lights. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ijin said, "The first flight did not take off because you refused to tremble." Zamira smiled faintly.
No.
"It did not take off because someone finally looked at the paperwork." He laughed once, quietly. Not because it was funny, because it was true. Months earlier, she had been arrested at this airport, placed across from a Korean Mafia boss who bought out first class to interrogate her. But by the time the cabin lights dimmed and the runway turned dark, Seol Ijin learned that the calm woman he expected to frighten was not carrying guilt. She was carrying the sealed envelope that grounded his empire long enough to save it.